Father, we ask that you cleanse and sanctify us for this deliverance.
The Deliverance. The story begins in 2011 with Ebony Jackson, a struggling single mother who's fighting battles on multiple fronts. She's an alcoholic prone to violent outbursts, trying desperately to hold her family together while dealing with her own demons. Ebony makes the difficult decision to pack up her chaotic life and move her 3 children to what she hopes will be a fresh start in Gary, Indiana. With her teenage son, Nate, who's old enough to see through her promises, but still wants to believe. Daughter Shantae, who's caught between childhood and the harsh realities of their situation. And youngest son, Andra, an innocent boy who becomes the center of everything that's about to unfold. But what Ebony doesn't realize is that their new house comes with a price that no family should ever have to pay. This isn't just another rundown property in a struggling neighborhood. It's a place where the boundary between our world and something far more sinister has been torn apart. The house harbors a dark secret that will test every ounce of strength this fractured family possesses. Living with them is Alberta, Ebony's domineering white mother, who has raised her mixed-race daughter in an environment filled with complicated racial and familial tensions. Alberta is battling cancer, which adds another crushing layer of stress to an already volatile household. The relationship between mother and daughter is a minefield of unresolved issues, years of resentment, and love that's been twisted by pain and disappointment.
What do you expect me to do, Ebony? Eat shit with too much garlic?
Shut the f*** up.
At first, the supernatural occurrences seem like minor annoyances that could be explained away by the stress of moving and the house's age. A door that won't stay closed, strange sounds that could be the pipes settling, cold spots that might just be poor insulation. But the Jackson family quickly discovers that these aren't normal household problems. The house seems to be alive with malevolent energy, and it's focusing its attention on the most vulnerable member of their family. Young Andra becomes the primary target of whatever evil entity has claimed their new home. The sweet, innocent boy who used to laugh and play begins displaying disturbing behavior that terrifies his family. He's found banging his head against the basement door with such force that he leaves bruises on his forehead. When questioned about his actions, Andra claims that an invisible man named Trey is telling him to hurt himself and do bad things.
I was talking with Trey.
The supernatural events escalate with terrifying speed. Objects begin moving on their own. Books flying off shelves. Chairs sliding across rooms. Doors slamming with enough force to shake the entire house. Strange shadows move along the walls, even when no one is there to cast them. The children start experiencing vivid, horrifying nightmares that seem to bleed into their waking hours. What begins as subtle psychological terror transforms into full-blown demonic manifestations that can no longer be ignored or rationalized away. But the real nightmare begins when the outside world gets involved. Child Protective Services receives reports about the family's situation, and social workers arrive to investigate what appears to be a clear case of child abuse and neglect. They see Andra's mysterious injuries, witness the family's dysfunction, and observe Ebony's erratic behavior, but they have no understanding of the supernatural forces at play. To trained professionals who deal with domestic abuse cases daily, the evidence points to one conclusion: these children are being harmed by their caregivers. Ebony finds herself trapped in an impossible situation that threatens to destroy what's left of her family. How do you explain to government officials that your house is possessed by demonic entities? How do you convince trained social workers and skeptical authorities that your child isn't being physically abused, but rather tormented by invisible forces that want to claim his soul? The very system that's designed to protect families becomes another enemy, threatening to tear apart the Jacksons, while the real danger continues to grow stronger within the walls of their home. The demonic presence seems to feed on the family's pain and trauma, growing more powerful with each passing day. It becomes increasingly clear that this isn't a random haunting. The evil entity has specifically chosen the Jackson family, drawn to their dysfunction, their unresolved conflicts, and the generational trauma that has plagued them for years. The supernatural force uses their deepest wounds against them, turning their love for each other into a weapon of psychological torture. As the situation spirals out of control, the demonic activity becomes more violent and direct. Andre's behavior becomes increasingly erratic and dangerous. He speaks in voices that aren't his own, demonstrates knowledge he couldn't possibly possess, and displays physical strength that defies explanation. The boy's eyes sometimes go completely black, and he speaks of things that would terrify hardened adults. During these episodes, he seems to be fighting against something inside himself, begging his family to make it stop. The authorities grow more suspicious with each visit. Social workers document every bruise, every outburst, every sign of what they interpret as abuse. They see a dysfunctional family with an alcoholic mother, a sick grandmother, and children who are clearly suffering, but they refuse to consider any explanation that doesn't fit their training and experience. The pressure mounts as they threaten to remove all 3 children from the home. Desperate and running out of options, Ebony begins reaching out for help from unconventional sources. She contacts local religious leaders, spiritual advisors, and anyone who might understand what her family is facing. But many of them are either too skeptical to take her seriously or too frightened to get involved once they witness the supernatural activity firsthand. Alberta, despite her complicated relationship with her daughter and her own battle with cancer, begins to recognize the severity of their situation. The proud, stubborn woman who has spent years criticizing Ebony's choices starts to understand that they're facing something beyond human comprehension. Her maternal instincts, perhaps dulled by years of disappointment and illness, begin to reawaken as she witnesses the supernatural attacks on her grandchildren. The demonic entity's influence over Andre becomes more pronounced and terrifying. The boy begins levitating during his sleep, speaking in ancient languages, and demonstrating knowledge of family secrets that he could never have learned. His small body becomes a battleground between the innocent child he is and the malevolent force trying to claim him. During lucid moments, Andre begs his family to save him, his small voice breaking as he describes the terrible things the entity is showing him and forcing him to experience. As the final confrontation approaches, Child Protective Services arrives with court orders to remove the children immediately. They've seen enough evidence of what they consider abuse and neglect, and they're no longer willing to leave the children in what they perceive as a dangerous environment. But their timing couldn't be worse. The supernatural activity reaches its peak just as officials are trying to separate the family. The climax becomes a desperate battle, fought on multiple fronts. Ebony must fight to save her son from demonic possession, while simultaneously trying to prevent authorities from taking her children away. The house itself becomes a war zone as supernatural forces clash with human determination. Furniture flies through the air, walls shake with otherworldly power, and the very foundations of the building seem to groan under the weight of the spiritual conflict taking place within its walls. The resolution requires more than traditional religious intervention. This isn't simply a matter of performing an exorcism or saying prayers. It's about confronting generational trauma, breaking cycles of pain and dysfunction, and finding the strength to fight for love, even when everything seems hopeless. Ebony must face not only the demons trying to steal her child, but also the demons from her own past that have made her family vulnerable to such an attack. The final battle tests every relationship within the family. Alberta must reconcile with her daughter and accept responsibility for the pain she's caused. Ebony must find the strength to overcome her addictions and truly put her children first. Nate and Shante must step up to protect their little brother while processing trauma that no children should ever have to endure. And Andre must find the courage to fight against the darkness that has invaded his mind and soul. In the end, the Jackson family's survival depends not on supernatural intervention from outside forces, but on their ability to heal the wounds that made them vulnerable in the first place. The battle for Andre's soul becomes a battle for the entire family's future. They must choose between the familiar patterns of dysfunction and pain that have defined them for generations, or the much harder path of healing, forgiveness, and genuine love. The story concludes with the family forever changed by their ordeal. They've faced literal demons and emerged scarred but stronger. The house may have been a portal to hell, but it also became the place where they learned to fight for each other with everything they had. The supernatural threat is defeated not through magical rituals or divine intervention, but through the power of a family that finally learned to truly love and protect one another.